inviting me. I kind of just like to talk about my journey to Judaism. It's a very unusual story. I think you don't hear a lot of people converting to Judaism. It's not a proselytizing religion. So I like to share my experience, but I want to start off by saying that spirituality, whether that's religious-based, thought-based, however you exist in the world, right? It's a very personal journey. It's a very individual journey. Nobody's journey looks the same. So I always like to kind of just blanket that as there's no one size that fits all. And one of the best things I think we can do is have open dialogue and just communication with each other, talk through our ideas, bring perspectives to table. So it's kind of what I hope to do today. And I love to be peppered with questions, so feel free to ask away. I think there's common misconception with faith and religiousness that I grew up with. And it was this idea that it's grounded in just accepting information as it is. This is the way it is, don't question it. That's how it was in my family's household. And that is a bad place for me because I am a questioner by nature. I love to ask questions and be asked questions. So for me, that's how I understood the world, was to ask those questions. I was raised in a Christian home by two parents who played very consistent roles in our church. My father is Episcopalian. He has been Episcopalian my entire life. We were raised in the Episcopal Church. My mother is Catholic, very conservative Roman Catholic. She was raised Roman Catholic, and she tried her best to instill those identity and ideology into our family. But it wasn't until I was older when we made the conversion to Catholicism. And I'd love to say that this was something that was chosen for me and my sisters, but it was most certainly not. We were intentionally told by our mother that this was happening. When I was a teenager in the 1990s, there was a lot of tension happening in the Episcopal Church. There were, people were making room for LGBTQ plus individuals to be more participatory, more included, as they should be. My very conservative mother had a problem with us and jerked us out of the church because of those reasons. So my father was very open to my questions. He liked to allow me that freedom to explore. And I asked a lot of them. How do I know God is real? How do I know he's not going to send me to hell? As a child, I was focused on the questions that scared me. The questions that drove my faith was out of fear. God was painted as this figure in the sky who loved me, but would condemn me to burn for all eternity if I did something wrong. And as a child, that's a really complicated idea to struggle with. As I grew up, I struggled with more complicated theological questions of monotheism, yet a trinity, and those kind of things. These questions were met with derision from my mother and a strict reprimand. Usually I was told, I'm blasphemy. You know, this is blasphemy. Don't ask these questions. Don't do these things. So I stopped asking a lot of questions and kind of turned inward. Shortly afterwards, as I said, we were forced into this, I started asking those questions again. And it was usually met with a slew of Hail Marys, a trip to the confessional, followed by being grounded. Even when I was 19 years old and an adult in college, I was facing those things. So shortly after I turned 20, I left my family home, trying to escape kind of the rigor of my mother. Got a job at Disney World. Where else do you go when having an existential crisis? You go to Disney. Left college because I couldn't afford it at that time and needed to save some money. And spent those years fearing that God was going to send me to hell while I, crying Jesus, would weep for my troubled soul. I doubled down on prayers. I begged for peace. I begged for anything that could make me feel better about my religious self. I attended a Catholic church while living in Kissimmee, Florida, trying to keep that religious identity. But again, it was still grounded in fear for me. It was a lot of fear-based. Afraid of what God would do, afraid of my mother and disappointing her, and just kind of afraid in general. So I came back to college, went to the Catholic Church here in Starkville, kept trying to hold that identity and maintain it. Married my ex-husband, Freudian slip, ex-husband. And by 2010, I was in the middle of my third miscarriage. I had miscarried this would be my fourth child, a set of twins and 2 single births, all naturally terminated. And I thought God was punishing me for what I was experiencing. I was too robotic. I didn't believe it. I was always questioning. I went to Mass more. I prayed with my rosary. I clung to that identity and prayed that I wouldn't be found with fault. Begged my mom for guidance, and her advice was pray more. Tell God what you want, he'll give it to you, but you got to pray more. I think my desire for a child at that point was on back order because it didn't seem like I was getting answers to those questions. Kept asking those questions. Why? How? If so, why does this happen? Why does God pick on me, this, that, and the other? Felt like my questions kept me from my goal, and my questions were why God was punishing me. Mary, if I buried them deep enough, I would forget them. So I kept going through the motions. And it's really easy in a Catholic church to go through the motions. Stand, sit, kneel, pray, Latin, English, go. And that's what it felt like for me, that I was going through motions and watching everybody else feel joy and peace while I just kind of seemed empty. That peace never really found me in Catholicism or Christianity. Finally carried a child to term, my oldest daughter. Thank you, progesterone and science. My mother told me that taking progesterone was a bad thing, that it was a sin, that I was going against what God wanted for me. So I struggled with it. My daughter was born in January 2012 with a birth defect, and I immediately thought God punished my child because I didn't believe enough. I was robotic. I didn't follow through. I was just going through the motions. Turns out, hindsight's 2020, and I recognize it now for what it is, a blessing in her because she is the strongest kid I have ever known. Will sit there and give you thumbs up signs and wave as she's being put to sleep to go through the 10th MRI that she's had in her life. I had a brother 18 months after her. 6 months later after he was born, their father and I divorced. His multiple affairs left me spiraling and feeling just broken. Spoke to my priest and my mother. Both told me in no uncertain terms that if I left him, I would go to hell. I needed to forgive him, I needed to reconcile with him, or I could never reconcile with God. And that's when it hit me. This is not what I believe in. This is not what I'm about. And I'm sad to say that it took to getting to 30 to figure that out, but it did. How could I be punished for someone else's just awful behavior? How was that right? What kind of God would punish me for that? For protecting myself, for living a life that was worth living. So I left him, I left the Catholic Church, and overall I left Christianity. Decided it was time to let me question what I wanted to question and search for those answers. I didn't want to continue shoving them down or ignoring them. I wanted to answer them. Single mom, 2 kids under 3, working at Mississippi State University and trying to make ends meet and struggling in every sense of the word. I had lost my community. I lost my mom and didn't really have support. My world was rocked. So I started reading everything. I read about Hinduism, Buddhism, Voodoo. I read about Taoism, Wiccan, Sikhism, Islam, the different Christian denominations. You put it out there, I was reading it.
That's what you say you lost one. Did she pass away or did
we stopped having a relationship?
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No, you're good. Yeah, I should have clarified that. Yeah, I did not. She is still very much alive and very same mindset. Not much growth on that end. So I started reading everything that I could about different religions because I was thirsty for something. My soul wanted something more and I wasn't finding it. I met my second husband on campus. In the midst of my questionings, he is a Quaker. So I started to pick his brain. Like, what is this? What do you do? You know, I've heard of Quakers and Shakers, but it was always very negative. Can you explain it to me? And I checked it out, but it still didn't fit me. I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel like I was at home. And if there's anything that I've learned through this journey, it's that spiritual place, that peace of mind, that peace of soul, whatever that looks like. It's the most calming and peaceful sensation almost immediately. And I hadn't experienced it yet. And in 2018, I underwent a surgery on my foot. I was unable to stand for longer than to go to the bathroom. I had to keep it elevated, so I was limited in movement. I literally could not get out of bed, especially not on my own. So I was watching TV. My now husband brought me a book. He said, I saw this. I thought of you. Thought you might want to read it. And it was Anita Diamant's Choosing a Jewish Life. It's like, all right. I said, why this book? Why did you bring me this? And he said, well, your 23andMe that we had just done said you have Ashkenazim Jew in your background. I said, oh, that's true. My mother's biological father, who she never met, turns out is an Ashkenazim Jew. So he said, I thought it might be interesting for you to learn a little bit more about you and your background. So I started reading everything I could get my hands on after about 5 pages. It took 5 pages, and I said, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is it. This is what I've been looking for. Everything I read, and I read about 12 books in 1 month on Judaism. Everything I read made me more excited, more happy, and above all else, peaceful. I finally started to feel comfortable in my own skin, comfortable with, above all else, asking questions. It's one thing I love about Judaism is they encourage to question everything. And I was like, finally, a love after my own heart. I can question. I love this. Within a month of those 12 books, I decided to convert. And not idly, I was going to do this. I literally, that same day, walked into the storage closet in my 2-bedroom apartment, got the Christmas tree, and threw it in the trash can, much to my neighbor's chagrin. She was not happy with me. I did offer it to her. I said, it's a pretty lit tree. It's been used twice. Would you like it? She said no. I was devouring as much as I could about Judaism. The first Friday that I practiced Shabbat, I lit the candles, I made the bread, I said the prayers. It felt like I had been doing it my entire life. It was very natural, it wasn't forced, and above all else, even though there is a very structured approach to Shabbat and that practice, it didn't feel robotic. It didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like I was standing in somebody else's shoes. This is when I realized this is who I was supposed to be. Judaism has this great belief. Every Jew, past, present, and future, was at Mount Sinai when Moses was given the 10 Commandments by Adonai. I have never felt something to be as true as that connective tissue in that moment. I don't say that because I think everyone is supposed to be Jewish. I don't. I think the world is built on people being Jews and not Jews, having these different ideas. This diversity is seen as such a dirty word these days, but it's necessary for the world to be what it was intended to be. I truly believe that I have always been Jewish, even though I was christened Episcopalian and converted to Catholicism. This is where I was supposed to be. When I told my parents I was converting, that was a fun conversation. My father, the man that he is, reacted with kindness, love, and acceptance. He was like, baby, do you? If this is who you're supposed to be, go for it. I'm super proud of you making your own decisions. When I told my mother, her first response was, why? So I explained a very shortened version of what I just went through with y'all, leaving out the disparaging comments against her. When I finished, she said, it's a blessing your children have a real parent who is a Christian, if this is who you're going to be. Those words cut me deeper than anything that had happened to me at that point, and still deeper than I want to admit today. But at that moment, I refused to let her steal my joy. Now, since she is still not happy, but our relationship has reached a place where we can talk, not about religion. We do not discuss religion at all, but at least to have that communication. Being Jewish wasn't easy in 2018. Certainly has not gotten any easier in 2026. In many ways, it's more difficult now that my children are older and they get asked questions at school. Both of my children identify as Jews. In fact, they're preparing for their bar and bat mitzvahs right now. So I'm pretty proud of the efforts they're putting in to learn Hebrew and getting to hear them participate. They're proud of being Jewish. I am unashamed of being Jewish. I am aware of the hate and misconceptions of our faith and the ideas that float around. But that's why I think that this open dialogue and discussion is so important. I found my place of peace in my spiritual journey, and I tell people just explore things, ask questions, and don't stop asking those questions until you find what works for you. I have a lot of people who tell me, you talk about your religion being, your Christian religion being fear-based, and that there was a lot of fear, but the Old Testament God is so scary. And I'm like, well, maybe, sure, but I don't necessarily think it was a fear of God. I think it was a fear of that place because I wasn't a Christian. And I didn't realize that until I was an adult. But that's what the fear was. It wasn't this fear of this person in the sky with this big long beard condemning me to someplace. It was this fear of living this life that I wasn't supposed to be living. And I think that's what it boils down to. Now, the theology, of course, also is important. I do align with the Jewish theology. I don't accept the Christian theology at all. But I also say, it's okay that we have differing beliefs. It's okay that I don't accept this and you don't accept that. What's important is that we have this mutual dialogue. And we have conversations about these journeys and what they look like for us. I also have people ask me, are you forcing your kids to have a bar and bat mitzvah? Are you doing the same thing your mom did, just in a different way to your own kids? And I say, I expose my children to a lot. Their father is still Christian and takes them to Christian events. They celebrate Christmas with their dad. Their stepdad is a Quaker. So while we don't celebrate holidays in a Quaker household, they do have that experience. So I like to say that they get this kind of well-rounded view of they get to see all of these different experiences and they get to choose what works for them. And, for them, it was Judaism. And not gonna lie, I'm super proud that they got to experience these things and kind of find what works for them. But that's kind of my journey from Catholicism to Judaism in a nutshell, but I'll be happy to answer any questions or love to hear any comments too.
So you began learning Hebrew really early on?
Yes.
So are you?
I am not fluent. Don't ask me to have a conversation with you. I know the prayers and can rattle the prayers off. I can follow the services and sing the songs. I sing at our synagogue occasionally to help out our lay leader. But no, I am not conversational in Hebrew. I will hope to be one day.
Is it currently how much Latin you need for being a Catholic? Is it kind of a similar
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more because our services are completely in Hebrew.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so there is, we occasionally will do an English version of something, but it is immediately followed or preceded by the Hebrew. So I think in the Catholic, at least in the masses that I grew up in, there was a Latin mass and there was an English mass. And we usually went to the English mass. If my mom was feeling super spicy, we would go to the Latin mass. Yeah. Personally, I like it better when you don't understand what's happening in the mass.
Yeah. I think that's when you kind of have the not really, kind of just not feeling it. Like you're in the church and you can see everyone else, but it's almost like an emperor's new clothes type. You guys are feeling it? Is that
Yeah.
we kind of have the same conversation when people are, I can't remember if it's Presbyterian or the other P one, but one of them has speaking in tongues and people come in.
Pentecostal,
yeah, hosting and stuff. Presbyterians are the cool ones actually, but the speaking in tongues, people come in and they're they don't even fully know if everyone around them believes that or if they think everyone else believes that. And, that's a pretty similar feeling that I had a few times I went to a church. I was I'm just not feeling it in my bones. Everyone else seems to be.
Yeah, I never felt comfortable in the church setting. I have no problem in our temple. I've always felt even with day one, and I'm an introvert. I don't like being in situations where I don't know people. It makes me super uncomfortable. But the minute I walked into temple, I knew not a soul. Had to introduce myself to the rabbi in there at the time, Seth Oppenheim, and Rabbi Seth was just wonderful, and I immediately felt at ease. Whereas in the churches that I had been in, I felt very uncomfortable, like I didn't belong there, like just I was, a sneetch with a star upon my belly, and everybody else didn't have a star, and everybody was aware that everybody knew that I didn't believe or that I was questioning, and it was just an uncomfortable situation.
Do you think if you stuck with Episcopalianism, do you think you would have still questioned as much as you did and God and Christianity?
I asked myself that a lot because my father's the verger in All Saints up in Tupelo. So he's still very active. I often ask myself that, but ultimately it came down to one of the biggest theological problems I had with it was that it is a proclaimed monotheism, but in the Christian faith, it's a trinity. And one of the passages that I love from the Tanakh or the Jewish Holy Book is, I am Adonai your God. I brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. And it's this idea of this one singular, a true monotheism. And so my problem with Christianity was that seems like it got skewed somewhere. It seemed like we brought in all of these participating people into it, which is great, but it didn't seem to track for me. It didn't make sense to me. It's why am I praying to this person instead of directly to God? And so for me, while I have major respect for the Christian faith, it wasn't something that I ever felt oh, this is what I believe. It was always a question. That my mother's Catholicism was amped up, right? She is an extreme version of very, very conservative Catholic theology. I mean, she was Catholic before Pope John Paul II said, Jews are not responsible for the death of Christ. We should not be punishing Jews for the death of Christ. She does not follow that same thinking, which is why she had such an adverse reaction to my conversion. Now, I mentioned my children are having bar and bat mitzvahs. My father is attending, as is my stepmother. My mother and stepfather have told me they will not be there.
Yeah.
And I was okay, well, you can tell your grandchildren that. That's fine. So I have often asked myself, if I had stayed Episcopalian, would I still be it? And I think the answer is no. Just the theology is just where I have a problem with it. I felt more comfortable in the Episcopal faith, but just never at peace.
Yeah.
So did you say you never felt like you believed it?
I think I believed it at one point, but I questioned it. And the questioning led to more questions, which led to, oh, maybe I don't actually believe it.
I was going to say, do you think you convinced yourself?
Yes.
Because
100%.
what you described was a similar thing that I felt back because I grew up Southern Baptist.
Okay.
And Southern Baptist, when you're saved, you're saved.
Right.
Different.
Yeah.
And I believed,
Yeah.
but I never felt saved. And so
Yeah.
that was a real disconnect there.
Yeah.
To the point of, going up in tears a couple times,
Yeah.
why not me? So
100%. I mean, I blamed all of my miscarriages, which were just because I didn't have the hormonal levels to maintain a pregnancy. I blamed all of that on the fact that I didn't believe and that I wasn't a good enough Catholic or Christian or whatever you want to call it. So 100%, I think there's a lot of tricking your mind into it. I think it's also the environment that you're in. If you don't have an environment that is open to that kind of debate, that kind of questioning, I think it can go the way that mine did, and to the point where it was a very, very dark place for me for a lot of years, and made me feel less than because of it. So yeah, I get that. I'm sorry that was your experience too.
fine.
Yeah, that's good. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because kids growing up in a particular religious household like you did, don't necessarily feel like they have a choice, but you've given your kids choice.
Yeah.
In that. So, even though they're probably, heavily influenced by their parents. So.
Surely. Yeah. I mean, they've been going to temple since 2018. So, I'm sure that they've been influenced. What I have noticed is that they more actively engage with Jewish study and that identity. In fact, my son got punched on the playground and called a very, very ugly slur because he told some kid said, "What are you doing for Christmas?" And he said, "Oh, we're going, we have a Hanukkah party to go to." And it created this thing. It was like, oh, okay. But my son was like, "Hey man, I don't care. I'm still Jewish." And so it's this moment of, I don't want my children to feel the same pressure that I felt. I'm sure I will screw up my children in other ways, but that's the one area that I don't want them seeing a therapist for. It's like, be comfortable, find what works for you, because what works for mom or Nate or your dad or whoever may not fit you and your journey and what you're supposed to be doing.
So like with a church, it's like I also had the same kind of, not Catholic upbringing, but kind of upbringing where it's like, don't question that. So in Templar, like in Judaism, is it like people are more questioning, and then is there like a sort of sliding scale of like how Jewish someone is, like how much do they really believe? Is there like an accepted?
So there's not a sliding scale, right? Our thought process is, if you are a Jew and you believe in the Jewish theology or the Judaic theology, then you're a Jew. Doesn't matter how you practice that. So a lot of people think Jews are kosher. They dress like the Hasidic Jews in New York that you see with the hats and the curls. And that's one particular group, right? Judaism has branches, just like the Christian denomination is. And those branches practice different things in different ways. So I'm kosher. I'm a kosher Jew. In the South, that is incredibly difficult to do. So I call myself kosher as possible in Mississippi. So
Describe that, what it is. That's something that I don't know anything about. Like, what does it mean?
So to be kosher means that you follow the tenets from the Old Testament, what you would consider the Old Testament in Christianity, or the early books of Moses, so Genesis through
The Torah, if I'm correct.
yes, the Torah. I don't throw that word around because people sometimes look at me like, what is that? The Torah. So the 5 first books. And it's things like, you don't eat pork. You don't cook a babe in its mother's milk, which we interpret as you don't eat meat and cheese together. Some Jews are very strict on that. Some, like myself, are a little bit more lenient. Like chickens, a strict Jewish person who holds strict to kosher tenets may say you don't eat chicken and cheese in the same meal. Some of us, like myself, we say, well, chickens aren't born of their mothers in the same way. They don't drink the milk of their mothers, right? They're born of an egg and they immediately start to eat of the world around them and not from their mothers. So cheese and chicken is acceptable for somebody like me. Might not be acceptable for others. We don't eat shellfish. Shellfish are considered a tray food. So I don't like to use the word dirty, but that's the basic translation of it. So there are certain fish with scales are acceptable, fish without scales are not. So you don't eat shark or swordfish. So there are all these little ticky-tack things, and depending on how strict you want to be with it would influence what you might eat. Some Jewish people take the meat and cheese thing so seriously that they won't eat dairy within 6 hours of eating a meat meal. So pizza, that's strictly cheese or cheese and veggies. There's not going to be any kind of beef on top of it. So kosher just kind of speaks to those dietary restrictions and following, like, how strict do you want to be on this? As I said, I'm not as strict. I don't eat shellfish. I don't eat fish without scales. You also don't eat things that filter. So like catfish, you don't eat catfish, which is a shame because I feel like catfish would be really good. I don't know. I also, before I converted to Judaism, I loved oysters, so I really miss oysters. But I try to stay as close to it as I can. I never mix beef and dairy products. So really with Judaism, it's about, I almost want to say it's kind of like a pick your own adventure, right? You remember those books from when you were a kid? I don't know. That may be too old for you guys. Sorry. Oh, you guys know those? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah. So the choose your own adventures where you got to make the decision. Judaism is kind of like that, where you piece together what works for you, what you feel brings you closer to Adonai. Whether that's a strict, you do absolutely nothing. You are Shomer Shabbos, meaning you don't drive on the Sabbath. You don't buy anything on the Sabbath. You don't leave. You don't turn anything on. My stove has a kosher setting, meaning that it shuts off Friday right at sunset, and it does not come back until Saturday at sunset. So it just really depends on what works for the individual. For me, I feel closest to Adonai on the Sabbath when I can sit with my kids and my husband and we can do a puzzle, or maybe we'll go to the refuge. So obviously I will get behind the wheel of the car and drive on the Sabbath. And we'll go and we'll just walk and we'll look at the birds and nature and kind of experience, not usually when students are here because it's too packed. But we'll experience the world that way. But we try to find peace within each other and peace within what gives us a serenity and makes us feel closer to Adonai. There have been Sabbaths when I've turned the kosher setting off and my daughter and I have baked cookies together because that was something that brought us closer together. So it's kind of what makes you feel close to Adonai. And that might change. 10 years from now, I could be 100% kosher to the point of I'm vegan and I'm not killing animals. I'm not, slaughtering animals for my consumption. There are some Jews who take the kosher stance of being a vegan to not do any harm. One of the most important part of our faith is to save a life. If you can save a life, you save a life. And you don't do anything that can cause harm to a life. So we have fast days in our faith, and we just had a fast day on Monday, the fast of Esther, to celebrate Purim, which was Monday night through Tuesday. You might see a lot of Jews in costume on Purim. We celebrate Esther saving the Jewish people from Haman, and so one of the things that we do is we honor Esther by fasting, as she did. I cannot fast. I have hypoglycemia. My blood sugar will crash, and I can have some serious health repercussions from fasting. So because of that, I have to honor the protect life and element of Judaism rather than the fasting. This supersedes the fasting part. My children are not required to fast until they take the bar and bat mitzvahs. And even then, it's like, does this bring you closer to Adonai? Great, then do the fasting. If it doesn't, if it causes you mental, emotional, or physical distress, then you don't do it. It's a very long way to say that.
I'm curious about some of the family dynamic.
Yeah.
So you said in your teenage years you went from Episcopalian to Catholicism.
Yeah,
How old were you, and where are you? You said you got sisters.
I have two sisters.
Where are you in the line?
I am the oldest,
Okay.
so I'm the trial by fire baby.
So when your family made that shift from Episcopalian to Catholicism, how old were you?
I was 18 years old.
18. Okay.
My sisters were, hang on, I gotta do the math. 9 and 7.
Okay.
So there's a pretty big gap between
Right.
us.
And then you say now you've got stepmother, stepfather. So when did your parents then split up after that?
Yes, they split up I was 26 when they split up. And a lot of what drove them apart was differing religious identities. And
So
yeah, and just this, my father is much more middle of the road, laid back, accepting kind of guy. He was a military man, so I think that like influenced some of that to a certain extent. And my mother is very much the opposite of him, and that created a lot of tension in the household.
so is it safe to assume then you say you do have a relationship with your mother and your stepfather, but is that
It's a contentious relationship.
yeah, given your brothers, you go to your fathers and
Oh, 100%. My father and I talk every single day. My dad and I are very, very close. My father got me through my divorce and some pretty dark times. My mother, I call to make sure that she's doing okay and to say like, okay, are you taking your medication? You know, she has some health issues.
Is she involved in your children's life? No?
Somewhat. You know, she sees them for events, but it's not. They go to my father's to spend weekends pretty consistently. And if I say, hey, do you guys want to go see, they're called Nana, my mom and stepdad are called Nana and Pops. So do y'all want to go see Nana and Pops? And it's like, we have to. Because there's a tension. And you walk into their house and it's a very conservative Catholic house, and there are crucifixes all over the wall.
So
And
when she got remarried, she married another conservative Catholic. She got
Yes.
somebody with much more.
Met him on CatholicMatch.com. Yeah, did not know there was such a thing. And I said, can we make sure this guy's not a serial killer before you meet him? No, he's a good guy. You know, he's a good fit for my mom. So they do their thing, and we communicate, but it's not, I wouldn't call it the same kind of relationship that I have with my dad by any stretch.
I'm get.
No, it's-
Where are your sisters in the grand scheme of things?
So my middle sister,
With them.
yeah, my middle sister doesn't really have a relationship with either parent. She talks to them occasionally, but it's not to the extent that I have a relationship with my dad. She is conservative Catholic as well, so you would think she and my mom, but they're exactly the same person, so they butt heads quite frequently. My other sister, my youngest sister, is the sister that I'm close with, and she is actually a Methodist. And she and I have the stronger relationship with our father, and she kind of like me, she kind of just checks in with our mom, makes sure she's doing okay, and all of the things that you do as your parents, what you will realize what you do when your parents start to age, and just kind of making sure that they're okay. But it's not like we have topics we will not discuss with our mother, and there have been plenty of times when we have hung up on our mother. In fact, my youngest sister, both my sisters just had a little boy, one in January and the other in February, like 2 weeks ago. And the one who had her baby in February was my younger sister that I'm closer to. And our mother had been on a work trip, and one of the women she was with was sick and got sick and was like an upper respiratory thing. My mother drove back with this person on Friday. My sister went into labor that night, had the baby on that Saturday, and my mother went to the hospital to hold the baby, and then Sunday messaged my sister, oh, by the way, I have a scratchy throat. And then like a week later said, oh, by the way, I tested positive for RSV. And yeah, that was exactly. So my youngest sister and my mom are currently not on speaking terms. And I'm kind of the mediator there, trying to make our mother understand. I don't think you understand the seriousness of what you've exposed the baby to. So it's difficult to say the least. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty fun.
I've got a couple more, but I want to make sure everyone else is asking. This is Devin, by the way, the guy, president of our club. He was taking care of some other sub business and had to sneak in here a little late.
It's nice to meet you, Devin.
Nice to meet you too. Came back from a national meeting for SSA, which is very unfortunately timed the same time as our meetings.
Oh, well, They like to do that, right? Like people like to schedule things at the same time. Absolutely. That's why there's a baseball game happening right now, right?
Yeah.
I think there's probably came first, so.
Eh,
There's also some lucky club. Like they have every such like at least 2 semesters in ways in a row. It's been like at the same time as fans just like, man, I want to hear what they gotta say.
yeah, there's a lot going on campus tonight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
busy night.
it is.
But yeah, a lot of what you're talking about kind of reminds me of my aunt on my mom's side. That grandma on my mom's side, she is a crazy Christian. She's not Catholic, but she's just so much the same as your mom, at least in the story. And then, so my aunt converted to Islam, and it's like a holy war in Florida all the time, 24/7. But everything you're talking about, it kind of reminds me of my aunt like the whole time. Except she did try and make her kids also convert to Islam, and that did not stick. Like they kind of pretended because they were 12 and 14 or it's somewhere in,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
And then one of them had to wear a scarf about it, but like they became adults, and as soon as they were adults, they were like, no.
This isn't for me.
Yeah, so it's nice to hear that you're not like pushing your kids one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I will, Friday nights, I'm like, okay, come in the living room. It's time to light the candles, that kind of thing. But I try to give them much more grace than I think I received. I'm not perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sure that when my children look back, they will call me the crazy Jewish mom, the typical stereotypical Jewish mom. Find a nice Jewish girl, that kind of thing. But I really wanted my kids to feel comfortable. Now, their experience is wildly different than that because they started going to temple, they were 6 and 4. So they don't remember. I mean, my daughter was 1.5 years when I left Christianity. And my son was like 3 months old. So they didn't have that experience. They didn't know anything different. So for them, it's just kind of like, oh, well, mom's Jewish and we're Jewish and dad's this and we kind of do that thing too. And, so I try not to. I sure am not successful in every avenue of it. And I'm sure they might tell you differently occasionally, but I try to give them that out.
I'm wondering, is you say your ex-husband, is he like active?
No.
Just like,
No, he practices like Easter and Christmas. He's the holiday Christian, but he's not like the faith of it. It's more the social aspect of it for him rather than the faith of it. So it's less about the religion and more about the Santa Claus is here, the Easter Bunny has brought an Easter basket with a chocolate cross in it or whatever,
I'm wondering, obviously the demographic where we live.
Yes.
What happens when your kids get pitched, by friends, feel peer pressure to, hey, come to youth group,
Yeah.
and how would you feel if at the college they join Baptist Student Union?
If that's their journey, that's their journey. I mean, it didn't work for me. It didn't give me peace. But if that's where they wind up, then I think that my job as a parent is to say, okay, cool. If that's your journey, I love it for you. Mom's going to be a Jew. Mom's going to be over here. Please come home for the holidays. But, cool. I think that's how I hope I will react anyway. I can't speak to say, oh yeah, I will for certainly be this cool. But I hope that's how I will respond because that's certainly not what I received from my mom. And I don't want my kids to have the same feelings that I had, to just repeat that pattern.
I'm also wondering, because you mentioned a couple times that you experienced peace when you made the change. Is it possible that you could experience peace or receive comfort from holding a belief and the actual thing you're believing in is actually not true?
Yeah, I mean, I think that how you receive peace is based on a lot of different parameters. It's on what you need at that moment in time. And I think for me, what I needed was this system of thinking about the world in this way, interpreting. One of the things that I love about Jewish faith is tikkun olam, repair the world, make the world a better place. Don't do any harm to the world. What can you add that will make it better? How can we take care of other people? How can we help somebody in distress? How can Mr. Rogers even talked about tikkun olam, and this idea of repairing the world and making it an inclusive, unified place. So, however a person getting to peace looks like for them, whether it's a peace in like, oh, well, Judaism is my path, or Christianity is my path, or Islam, or whatever it may be, voodoo, Wiccan, whatever that may be, or nothing. And just saying, you know what, it's a beautiful world, and I'm going to live this life in this moment, and I'm going to go look at the man in the moon and just enjoy. Sorry, that was a thing when I was a kid. This is the man in the moon, the face of the moon. I'm just going to live in the belief that I'm here right now. What can I do with that life? However that peace looks for anybody, I think finding that peace and using that peace to do something good with it is ultimately what it should be about. It shouldn't be about the labels of Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu, whatever the label is, agnostic, atheist, freethinker. I think it should just be, let's find what brings the individual peace, and then let's see what good can come of us working together in that peacefulness and what we can attain. Mm-hmm. Which is probably very hippie.
And that's why it's so troubling when I hear the story of like son, having a fight on the playground just because.
To be fair, he did not hit back. He did not hit back. He was a good guy. He did not throw back and punch. And I told him next time you can punch him back.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part of this world that we're in. I'm wondering how you felt. Obviously there was the arson at the temple, Bethel, correct, in Jackson.
Yeah.
How's do you know much about that situation and how the community is recovering, et cetera?
We're our temple in Columbus. So I'm part of B'nai Israel in Columbus, and when we hold Shabbats on campus, our rabbis come from the ISJL, which is housed in Jackson, and that's the synagogue where they used to celebrate Shabbat and do services. So it was difficult to see it happen and to have it hit so close to home. That community is rebuilding, and we're going to get there eventually, and we're doing what we can to help them. It's hard to see. I mean, that's like an 18 or 19-year-old kid who has committed such an act of hate and just evil against a community for no other reason than that they believe something different than he does. And the kid on my son's playground, this is a learned behavior. They're learning this at home. They're not learning this, at least I hope not, in their schools, but they're learning it from somebody. It's the young man with Dave Portnoy here in town in the fall. It's hard to sit by and see these things happen. But I think when I was converting, one of the rabbis said to me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Do you know what you're going to experience?" And I said, "I have an idea." Yeah. I have a family history, sadly, with it. While my mother's biological father, was Jewish, my father's grandfather was a Nazi soldier in Germany, and was responsible for a lot of really, really terrible, terrible things. So I said, "Oh, trust me, I am aware of what this could look like and how bad this could get, just within my own family dynamic." Now that my grandmother, his mom, the soldier's daughter, could not be more welcoming, could not be more okay with it than what she's been. I had an experience probably, I think it was either right after the pandemic or right before the pandemic, but I was at the furniture store here in town, the big one that went out of business by Umi. And I had bought this really big, this huge painting for my now husband as kind of a gift. And it's this ugly old barn. It's this ugly, ugly painting that I gave him because I knew he would like it, but I secretly hate it. I don't secretly hate it. I hate it, and he knows that. But it hangs in our home. I bought this painting and did not think, how am I going to get this home? And it was too big to fit in my car. I drove a little 4-door Honda Civic, and I'm standing there with this painting going, what am I going to do? He's out of town at a conference. I have no way to get this home. And this 60, 70-year-old woman walked up to me, and she was in a CRV. And she's like, do you need help? And I said, oh, I'm just having some difficulty. And she said, well, what's wrong? And I told her, and she's like, well, I'll be happy to follow you home. And I'm like, well, I can take her if I have to, if, this goes south. And she, jumps me. She looks kind of tiny. Might need to defend myself. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So she followed me home, and she was as sweet as she could be. And she, gave me the painting. And as we're standing there in Southern old woman fashion, she said, what church do you go to? And I went, oh God, in my head. And I just had this moment of, okay, here it goes. This is it. It's either going to go really okay or really, really bad. I said, oh, well, I'm Jewish. I attend the synagogue in Columbus. And she just reached for my hands, and I instinctively I was like, oh, what's about to happen? And she goes, the Jews are such a blessed people. I was like, oh, thank God. It could not have gone better. But it was this moment that I was like, oh, this may not go really, really well. This could go really, really bad. But she was as sweet as could be, and was just very, very warm. And she's like, well, if I ever get over to Columbus, can I come? And I was like, yeah, you can come. We'd be happy to. And she's like, and you come to my church, which I can't remember which one. I think she goes to the big Baptist church here in town. And I was like, yeah, yeah, sure, And it's this moment of understanding that there are misconceptions of the Jewish people. There are stereotypes. There are just outright lies that we face. And just like any group can go through that. I don't think it's unique to the Jewish people, but kind of living with that knowledge, I had to sit my children down and tell them about Bondi Beach and explain to them, like, this has happened. I'm not shielding you from this. I'm not going to give you all the details. I'm certainly not going to let you watch the footage, but part of my job as your mom is to tell you about the real things that you might see or hear. So when the temple burned in Jackson, my daughter said, well, why did somebody do that? And I said, because they're just angry. They're angry at something. I don't know what, but they're angry, and they felt like it was necessary to react this way, and because they don't understand what we believe, or they don't like what we believe. So communicating is a super important part for me with my children when events like this happen. And it's just kind of like, I don't want to tell them, oh, it's great, it's hunky, because when they go out to school, they're seeing firsthand that this is not okay. My daughter had a teacher a couple years ago. She got in trouble, and the teacher called me, and she said, your daughter's refusing to do this project. I said, what? That doesn't sound like her. What's she refusing to do? And, she's stubborn, but she certainly isn't defiant. She is now that she's 14, by the way. She's completely defiant. And the teacher said, well, it's a what I'm asking Santa Claus for. And I said, we celebrate Hanukkah. I said, they don't really do Santa a whole lot. So, we've had the conversation, don't tell kids that Santa's not real. Don't break the magic for other kids. And so I said, that's probably why she didn't do it, is because that's not something we do in our home. And the teacher's like, when she told me she was Jewish, I thought she was lying. I was like, why would a child, she was probably about 9, why would a child lie about, why that lie? That seems like, a strange lie. So I think it's kind of just having these conversations with them so they're prepared in those moments when these things happen. whether it's minor, like a Santa Claus list, or something major, like what happened at Bondi Beach.
And for the record, I totally would have, when I was 9, I would have said that I was Jewish. Yeah, some work. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Ryan would go around and tell kids that Santa's not real too.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I was like, we've got enough strikes against us. Don't tell the kids there's no Santa. Don't do that. Let them have their magic. This is their cousin. I mean, their cousin, my sister's oldest, my youngest sister has an 11-year-old, and our kids are very, very close. And, she still does Santa. So we were like, shh, don't tell your cousin. Let her have this.
And something about the recent attacks and recent uptick in anti-Semitism, obviously. And I think we had talked about it at one of our meetings, but the guy that he burned down the one in Jackson, I think he was quoting exactly some podcaster about Jews being devils or something like that. So there's totally a lot of things originating with the internet, obviously, but he has a new wave of anti-Semitism. So it's even if if you're gonna get to Thimble, and they'll have people telling them this has happened in the past. It's there's not even any telling of the new kind of bigotry or the way that it seeps into things. I told a story. I'm not gonna go into it, but way less of an effect. But even watching Family Guy, you get a weird stereotype that I was a kid watching it, so I wasn't even thinking it's sort of tongue in cheek in the show, but I don't know that because I'm 9.
You're a kid, yeah.
So it's the things being fed to you, you may not even recognize that they're bad. But,
Exactly. And I think that's why it's so important that parents make sure that, they're instructing their children and guiding their children, saying, oh, this is not okay. And, we try to do that with my kids. And certainly there is the uptick in anti-Semitism, but, that's stereotypes like that have been happening forever, right? I mean, the whole Jewish diaspora comes from the blood libel and Jews are sacrificing children, doing these things for their God. And it's that's not happening, right? If you go and you look at any portraiture from the Middle Ages on, right, you'll find the exaggerated nose, the hook nose. Shakespeare himself wrote about a Jew who was a shrewd businessman who was cheating people. So this is, hate against Jews is not new. Pogroms have been happening over the centuries. This is not something that was limited to biblical times, to the Middle Ages, when you have the Spanish Inquisition, you have the English expulsion of Jews in 1290. The Spanish Inquisition was in 1492. And then in 1655, Cromwell is oh, well, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, we'll let you guys back in. But there are so many restrictions that it's conditional, right? It's not, you're allowed, but you're not included. And then you've got what's happening in Russia in the 19th century. You've got the 20th century with the Holocaust, of course. And Jews not being allowed to come to the United States during those moments, being limited on who could escape and who wouldn't. And unfortunately, here in the last decade, we've seen an uptick in anti-Semitic comments, and I think it's born out of ignorance and out of just a perpetuated hate that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I hope it doesn't make sense to anybody, but
Yeah, I was asking, you're the family sponsor for Hillel.
Yeah.
What's the motivation there? Why is it important to have a Jewish group on campus, from your perspective?
I think it's important to have a Jewish community on campus because we are here. They are here. And I think when we are such a minority in the South, having that connectivity for students is really important. Being able to see that they're not alone, they're not isolated, that they can build a community on this campus, both with students on campus and then with the Jewish community in the surrounding areas, I think is super important to help keep kids here, keep them involved, keep them going to class. I think part of my job as the Hillel advisor is to remind students that you've got this whole community of people rooting for you to be successful at state. And some of them come here and they feel, most of my students are from Long Island or New York. There's not a lot of Jewish students from the South. So showing them that they're not alone when they get here, that they're not going to get lost in the sea is really important to me, just to kind of give them that structure and that community that I lost when I left my faith. I wanted them to have something there as that safety net, that little taste of home.
I think we have a kind of a shared goal there, like with our club is, there are similarly not a lot of atheists around the South in general.
Sure.
So it's very good to like offer a kind of space to just like be open and out. Like
Yeah.
we do exist on this campus. We like are seeing everything the same as you guys are. Like we're out there doing stuff, experiencing all of it.
Yeah. You just bring a different perspective from one aspect of your lives to your personal life. And I think that that's having your squad, having your tribe, your people, whatever you want to call it, I think is super important no matter what your belief is, right? If it wasn't, we wouldn't see all of the different, we wouldn't write the big BSU on the other side of campus, the Wesley house. Like we wouldn't see these things exist if there wasn't some recognition that community matters. Whether that community is 5 students and advisor in FAA MSU, or if it's the 5 to 10 students in Hillel with their advisor, because we're also a very small group. I think having that connective tissue helps students be successful on campus because they don't feel isolated. They feel seen, they feel heard and recognized, and above all else supported and not ostracized for their belief systems. And I think that's one of the key factors that I try to instill in my students is just because you've left New Jersey or Pennsylvania or New York, you're not alone here. That we have a group you can attend temple with. We do Shabbats on campus occasionally. We have events. They just had a big costume party on Monday night for Purim. So yeah, it's important to have that connectivity.
I think it's cool too because they, unlike our club, like atheism is almost defined as like the obviously the lack of belief. So there's no dogma, there's no like tradition that's passed down. All the atheists go to this place on Sunday or whatever. But there's like, so it's kind of cool that like people that are coming from the Northeast where they have like a high Jewish population, it's cool that like there's something they can pick up and take with them. Versus like, we have some atheists that will come from, there's one from Boston.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's actually atheist, that may be Catholic.
You can.
Yeah, I forgot, yeah. He's a friendly Catholic. Yeah, he's a free thinker. Or like, well, we have people from like that come from different states or whatever, but like the majority of us are from here. And if we had a tradition.
I'm from Tennessee.
Oh,
Yeah. United States.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so what we see is like, people that are from the north are like not so surprised. They're surprised and they're not surprised. Like not surprised because I've seen plenty of atheists.
Right.
But then they're like, oh my god, there's atheists down here.
In the South, in the
Like-
Bible Belt. Holy crap. Yeah.
Because we all have the perspective. I think we all the Southerners that are like that have been baking here. It's like I don't know what life would be like if I didn't see a Dollar General and a church and a church next to each other at every street corner. And they come like, oh my god, you guys have so many churches.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like capitalist realism, where like we're talking about like car brain, where just like
Yeah.
whenever you're living in like a society, like a lot of things are just so built in as like what is the normal or like default, and especially in the South, like Baptist is very much the kind of like assumed default. At least in my brain growing up, that's
Yeah.
what I always was kind of fed from just the area.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely something to that. I'm a military brat. My father was in the Air Force. We moved all over the continental U.S. until I was a teenager in high school when my dad decided that Columbus seemed like a great place to retire. So when we moved to the South, it was definitely a culture shock for us. And we certainly, my mother was very surprised to find Catholic churches in Mississippi. So that was a little bit for us. And I was surprised when I found out that there was a Jewish temple so close. But I was super shocked because I was just as non-aware at that stage. But that's what I like about our little groups on campus, is that we're bringing something here that maybe is unusual, but is just as relevant and enriching and important here as it is in, Manhattan. Or, my husband is from the backwoods of Indiana. And when I say the backwoods, I mean the backwoods. Like there is nothing there. Like you're going around curves and you can't see what's coming. There is nothing there. And every church that's there is pretty much a Baptist church where he grew up. So for him to be Quaker, it was, for him, it was a little bit of shock. And here, he doesn't have a community. It's kind of just him doing his own thing and occasionally zooming in to Quaker meetings on the East Coast because the group that was here dissolved during COVID. So he doesn't have that unit. So sometimes he feels, kind of like I felt, a little lost at sea. But we call ourselves a dual household, but really it's mostly Jewish because he's like, I'll just do these things with y'all. And we're like, that's fine. Welcome aboard, fellow person. Have fun. So yeah, I think the setting that you grow up in definitely influences, for better or for worse, what you wind up looking to as an adult.
We'll put in a little plug for the small groups on campus that Dr. Drake and myself will be part of the interfaith panel 3 weeks from today.
Oh God, is it that soon?
It is on the 26th. So this has been really nice for me to get a chance to kind of build a little bit of rapport and get to know kind of your story. We're going to be, we actually got the questions last night and that's started to rattle a little around in my brain a little bit. But it'll be Dr. Drake, myself, the faculty sponsor for the Muslim student group.
Yes.
So I've never actually met him.
I have not either. Yeah.
And then Dr. Bissell.
I have not met him either. So.
Neither have I. He teaches in the philosophy and religion part. And as far as I understand it, he teaches some of like the Bible classes, Old Testament, New Testament, and stuff. He's also a preacher, and I think he's a British guy with a French name who moved to Mississippi like 20 years ago and was teaching here, adjunct sort of. And but he also is the preacher at, I'm not sure which variety of church.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I call myself a mutt. I mean, I've got predominantly German, but I've got a hair of French, a hair of Irish, and then the other quarter is Ashkenazi Jew. So yeah, it's just a mutt, a blend. My husband, all English all the way through, not even a question. With a last name like Drake, I mean, how could you not be? So yeah, it's really awesome. I'm looking forward to the panel. I've not had a chance to rattle the questions around, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it could be really good.
Well, we'll wrap this up here. Let's